Aloha, and thank you for joining us. This is A Better Day. I'm State Senator Sam Slom, and for the next half hour, I hope you'll stay with us because we're going to have an interesting program for you and hopefully informative as well. Well, we call this A Better Day because, of course, there is a political adjective that's used, a new day. And we know that every day is a new day. What we want to do, particularly in Hawaii, particularly with our economic problems and our struggles and everything else, is to make it a better day. And you know what? We can. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. First of all, just a quick wrap up for, last month's end of session. Wait, do you hear that? My gosh, I hear birds singing, and the sun is out brighter, and it's a much better time because the legislature is not in session. We were in session from January to May. We were trying to tax you and fee you and prohibit you and ban you and all of that stuff. But now we're gone until next January. So the good news is you only have to keep one hand on your pocket or purse until January. But you should be informed and aware of the issues and the discussion that takes place down in the big square building because ultimately it affects you. And I know your eyes glaze over when we talk about budgets and finances and all that, but wait a minute. You're the only ones that it really ultimately affects. So if we look back at the session, the 2013 session, the other sound that you heard was this. People slapping themselves on the back and saying, whoa, we did a wonderful job. It was a terrific session. And I heard some of my colleagues say, well, how would you rate the session? They said, oh, B+ or A. From my standpoint, the session was D, and that was D for dog and D for doggedly. It was a difficult session, and it was an expensive session. And of course, the highlight in an odd-numbered year is to try to pass a 2-year fiscal budget, an operating budget. And we did. We passed a $24 billion, that's billion-dollar biennial budget. Now, again, I don't know if the billions make you glaze over or anything like that, but hey, guess who's going to pay all of this? You. There's nobody else out there. You're going to pay the $24 billion. You're going to pay the extra $5 billion that we had in specific appropriation bills, and we also had the OHA budget. We had the judiciary budget. We had a $500 million in salary increases for public worker unions, and a lot of grants and aid and special appropriations. Now, everybody that got the money will tell you with a straight face, it's a wonderful thing. It's going to help the keiki or the kapuna. But in fact, we have too many programs. We have a multiplicity of different programs. Well, I have been a critic of the budget and of our spending for a long time. But this time I said, look, I said, Sam, because that's my name, I said, Sam, you got to do more than just complain about the budget. So, since I got elected, every year, in addition to our salaries, legislators get what's called an office allowance. It's addition to their salary. So I went back for the 17 years, added up all of the money that was in my annual allowance, which I've never used a penny of it. And so I was very pleased to present a check in that amount to the taxpayers. And actually, I was looking for some keiki to present it to. It comes out to $118,037. That's the amount, additionally, that just went to me to use, but I didn't use any of it. But guess what? I looked around. I can't find the $118,000. I don't know where it is. I want to give it back. And all of my majority friends, including the Senate President, said, make the check out to us. We'll take it. The point is, you're paying an awful lot for your government. When the legislature meets in January, even if we did nothing else, which might be a good idea, but even if we did nothing else, it's costing you $35 million just to have us meet. You pay for our staff, you pay for our supplies, you pay for our offices, you pay for everything. It's very expensive. Some states only meet every other year. Some states meet part-time, and a few states meet all the time, all year long. Caution, you don't want that in Hawaii. It's bad enough that we have a part-time legislature. You don't want it all year round because then you'd never take your hands off your pocket or purse. Anyway, a lot of people ask, what do we do during the interim when we're not in session? Do we all go to the beach? Do we play games? Do we have R&R? The answer is we still have meetings and hearings and briefings, constituent meetings, neighborhood board, things like that. And for the state senate, we have occasionally special sessions because the other role that we partake in is called advise and consent. And about a month and a half ago, a circuit court judge on the island of Maui resigned her post, and that means the governor is going to have to appoint someone else. He will nominate a new justice, and the Senate will probably come back to advise and consent through hearings and through voting on that particular nomination. So we keep busy, and a reminder that you're always welcome, and you can always call any of us and let us know how you feel. In fact, this really is the best time to contact your legislator when we're not in session, because we have more time and we have more opportunity to listen to you. And you have a right to have us listen to you. Anyway, I have two really special guests today, and you're going to enjoy both of them. And both of them represent Kama'aina families, and both of them have been really heavily involved in the legislative process over the years. First of all, I'd like to introduce Colleen Meyer, former state representative from the area of Kahaluu and the windward side. Colleen was a state representative for many years. She distinguished herself with all of the things that she did, and she has run for the state senate, and hopefully she's going to run again. But she's really Akamai, and I found out particularly this year, I mean, there's hardly anybody in the state that you don't know or are related to, whether they came from Lanai or Molokai or anybody else. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, Sam, I was born and raised in Hawaii. Married a local haole boy whose family, his parents were born here, as my mother was born here. And so that's how I know a lot of people on Lanai and Molokai. My mother-in-law was born in Molokai. Her father he was George Monroe and ran the Lanai Ranch. He also, before that, ran a ranch in Kauai. She had a lot of sisters, a brother, lots of cousins. I, on the other hand, my parents had only 3 children. I had no cousins. My father's parents, siblings, never got married. One was a priest. The others were devoted to take care of their mother. So it was a wonderful thing when I married into the Meyer family, because I just inherited all these wonderful relatives and learned a lot about their history in Hawaii, which was different than my mother's. But anyway.
And that's important, isn't it? I mean, particularly socially in Hawaii and definitely politically. I mean, it's who you know, quite frankly, and people seem to trust you more if they can put you with a person or a place or a historic event or something like that.
Absolutely. And as you said, I was a state representative. I was elected 7 times. I had the pleasure of representing a lot of very old-time Kama'ainas in Hawaii, people who went 3 generations, 4 generations back in Hauula, Laie, Ka'ava, Kualoa.
But you also have a business background in real estate?
Yes. I was a realtor for over 30 years. I worked for a dentist. I worked for a psychiatrist. I did secretarial work. And that was one thing that surprised me when I first got elected in '94, was how many of my colleagues in the House had virtually no business background. That was kind of a shock.
Or limited experience, work experience as well.
Absolutely.
And it does make a difference, and Colleen Meyer was always a champion for small business because she knew about it and she knew how to make a payroll. And that's one of the complaints that I have, is that most of my colleagues they're good people. Well, some of them should be in jail, but most of them are good people. But very few of them have ever met a private payroll. And it's not to say that those of us that have are any different or any better than anyone else. It's just that you have different experiences.
Right.
Well, my other guest is Elise Anderson, and she also has a very storied background in terms of people from here, but also has worked at the legislature. Elise, tell us a little bit about yourself, and tell us also about your education, because that's important as well.
Well, my legislative background or my family background?
Start with your family background first.
Okay, so I'm actually 7th generation local resident.
Can you beat that, Colleen, 7th generation?
I don't know.
You got lucky, you married into the haole part, right? I'm sorry, go ahead, Elise.
So yeah, my first ancestors came here in 1837. They were named Amos Starr Cook and Juliet Montague Cook, and they founded the Chief's Children's School, and they taught about half-dozen future kings and queens how to speak English, and they helped to translate Hawaiian into a written language. So I'm I feel very honored to be part of that family. And then their daughter, Anna Charlotte Rice Cook, or no, their son, Charles Montague Cook, married Anna Charlotte Rice Cook, who founded the Honolulu Museum of Art, which, well, now that's what it's called. But and her husband, Charles Montague Cook, founded the Bank of Hawaii. So
I wonder how many young people today in Hawaii or elsewhere really have such a strong grasp about their background and know the people and know the things that they did.
Well, to be fair, I know that line of my family background, and that's, you know, 1/16 at best of, or maybe 1/4, 1/8. But
sound
yeah,
like
you
a
know,
couple politicians around this building. Yeah.
So I've got to give a lot of credit to my grandmother, who's probably watching me right now. Hi, Grandma Nancy, because she kind of charts the Hawaiian history very well and takes me to the mission house's annual meetings every year.
And tell us about your education.
I graduated from Punahou after 13 years of Punahou, which was a lot of Punahou. And then I went on to Princeton in New Jersey. And
who in the family had gone to Princeton? What brought you there?
Actually, I have two grandfathers who were both married to Grandma Nancy, who both went to Princeton.
Boy, you got double duty there. That's pretty
and they
good,
were both named Hugh. So the first one
wasn't
was
that confusing for Grandma Nancy?
Ask Grandma Nancy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I had my grandfather Hugh Peterson went to Princeton, and then my step grandfather Hugh Ogburn.
And you didn't major in social media or anything else. You majored in?
Well, ultimately I majored in English, but along the way, which is why the capital appeals to me, I think I may.
Why? We don't speak English here. What's the matter with you?
Oh, come now.
That's true.
And how did you get involved in the legislative process?
Well, actually, that's a good story. I was reading Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged, at the Pacific Club pool, and I was enjoying it a lot, and I had just decided that I was a Republican while I was reading Ayn Rand. And my old friend Corinne Ching walks by, and I start talking to her about having decided I was a Republican from Atlas Shrugged, and she asked me to work in her office.
You mean despite going through Punahou for 13 years and going through Princeton, you made that revelation. Thank you, Ayn Rand. Yeah.
I have to jump in here because I went to Punahou too for 13 or 14
years.
Is that
right?
I started in school, you know, like pre-kindergarten.
Yeah.
But Punahou was very conservative when I went there, and it was just kind of moving a little bit more to the left just when I graduated. So I felt that I got a very good Republican kind of backing at the school.
But you know, I'll have to say this. I mean, I look at Punahou as, you know, basically liberal and all that, but I think the quality of education is unsurpassed. And you know, oftentimes we talk about the money that's spent and everything else. The interesting thing is we're spending almost as much money on public education per pupil as they do at Punahou. I mean, it's crazy, right? Without the facilities, without the education, without really the structure, or with challenging you to think. And that's what education always used to be about. Nobody cared about Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. It was how good the teachers were, how good the education was, and what you brought away with that, how you learned.
How well
that's
you were prepared when you got out of
exactly,
high school.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So you majored in English.
Ultimately, but I started out thinking I'd major in chemistry or physics. That was physics was really my passion in high school. And then, so I went through that phase, biology, chemistry, physics. I became an engineer for about a semester. And then I officially joined the English department. Then I officially joined the economics department. And then I officially joined the
joiner, right?
yeah. Then I officially joined the art history department, and then I went back to the English department.
Wow. Okay, so there you were at the pool. You're reading Ayn Rand. Was she representative at that time? Corinne Ching walks by, and what happened? The light bulb went off, and you said?
No, the light bulb had gone off a few days earlier.
Yeah.
But.
And so you put a couple of years in here at the legislature for her office. Who else have you worked for? What have you done?
Well, Corinne's office while I was at the legislature.
Okay, so now the big question is, do you have desires of running for office now that you've seen it inside and inside?
Yes, but not now.
Yes, but not now.
I feel like young people should be out in the world and get some experience on the private payroll, as you mentioned, and or on a public payroll, but on some. I think people need foundations a little bit more strongly before they run for office than just, you know, running straight out of college.
Okay, here's the question then for both of you, because that's what we're talking about, young people and experience. We have a lot of new people in the 27th state legislature this year, and a lot of them are young, some of them very young. And the mantra that I've heard, and I'm sure many people heard during the session and publicly was, well, we're young and we're different and we're new and we're going to take the legislature in a different direction. How do both of you feel about that? Or what do you think about it?
Well, I feel pretty strongly that you need young people with the vim and vigor that they have.
Before they're too jaded, right? When they get older.
Yeah, well,
You get jaded when you're young.
True.
They have a lot of enthusiasm, but they lack a lot of experience. And that's why I feel it's good to have a balance of more mature people with the young people. And there should be an appreciation for both what they have to offer. I think youth alone doesn't mean it's going to be some fabulous outcome.
Yeah.
So you need
just
a
like
balance.
Old age doesn't mean wisdom necessarily.
Right.
Yeah. Well, what are your thoughts on this, Elise?
I half agree with her, but I'm not so sure that we need a balance as much as we need a lot of people who know who they are. And you know, when you have time under your belt, and people know what to expect. If you vote for someone who's been working in said industry for 20 years, you know they're going to support that industry. If you, or 10 years, 5 years, but you know that they have some kind of a bind, some kind of a platform, and then, you know, it makes people a little more impervious to lobbyists and special interests and bribery, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not pointing to any particular instances, but it just makes sense.
I wanted to jump in here a little bit because I wanted to tell the people that are watching that I worked for you this past session. And, you know, I've been a legislator, so I knew what it was like there, but the House and the Senate are not the same.
No, they're not, are they?
And also, all senators are not the same, and you were an extraordinary person to work for. You know, you're very open.
Wait a minute, you're off the payroll. You don't have to say that, Colleen, for goodness sake.
I want to acknowledge that. It was a great experience for me.
You know, the whole point when I kept saying that, no, not me, I'm not ever going to, I don't want to be in politics, I'm not a politician, I'm a business person. When I finally made the fateful decision and did run, I campaigned on the thing, well, you know what I do in business, you know my personal life, that's the way I would be. If you want me, fine. If you don't want me, fine. And I've tried to do that. And I think there is something to be said for consistency, no matter what.
Absolutely.
What you do. And you know, I have a lot of friends who we are diametrically opposed philosophically. But we get along fine. We have good humor. We can talk about things. We can disagree and all that. I mean, I did a radio program with Colleen Meyer every week for 5 years, and we would fight like cats and dogs on issues. But socially, I mean, we're good friends. And I think that's the way it should be. And I think that's the way the public wants it to be. And they're really fed up with the Congress and to some extent with the legislature that there's so much bickering and so much dealing going on and all of that. And I would say that part of it is the more life experiences you have, the more things that you do, the better equipped you are. I know throughout my life I was working and doing different things from the time I was 7 years old. And I learned very quickly, I think the biggest lesson was things I didn't want to do. No, I'm not going to be a construction worker. No, I'm not going to be a mathematician or anything like that. And it gives you, you know, a great deal of experience. And I think a lot of the younger people are lacking that today, and partly because the government says that we're protecting our children. And we protect them so much they can't work, they can't do this, they can't do that. And we tell employers, you have to pay them this, you have to do that. And it discourages them, and it's really difficult. So they sit around on a sofa doing this all day and then telling you that they're bored. So am I wrong about this?
No, you're right. I mean, because it doesn't give them the opportunity to explore these different things, like doing the paper. I used to do the paper route with my brother.
Yeah.
I loved then have to go up and collect money from these people, and
Yeah.
some people were awful. They want to slam the
Yeah,
door
you
in
learn
your
that real
face.
quick, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was always peddling things. I mean, that's all
Yeah.
a good experience. But
Sure.
parents today are afraid to let their children out and do those things.
Peddling things and getting rejection all the time. Well, it set me up for the state legislature now, you know, because I get rejection every day. But I mean, it's true. You learn different people. You learn that even though the mantra is the customer is always right, the customer may be a jerk, but still you're working for someone else and representing their business. And if it's your business, same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't mention, because you were asking me about my past, and I didn't, I'm still thinking about this more as the present, but I spent this last session working for Senator Willis Sparrow, who's a Democrat, and I very much enjoyed that. I agree with him on some things, I disagree with him on some things, but regardless of that, I always felt respected in the office, and like you were talking about with Colleen Meyer, yeah, I thought it was a very rich session in that way. But
how would you rate the session overall, both of you? I mean, I
With
always
a letter grade?
Yeah, I already gave you my prejudice at the top of the show, but yeah, give me a letter grade. Come on. Come on.
C plus.
C plus, okay.
Yeah,
Colleen?
I thought it was more like a C minus.
C minus, okay. So I'm the harshest one here.
A part of my rating is what didn't get passed.
Well,
things that
yeah.
I was very happy to see
Yeah,
didn't go
okay,
forward.
listen, that's a good point because that's what everybody always says. Politicians and others, they say, well, it could be worse. Of course it could be worse. And they say, well, this didn't pass, and this, but it wasn't for lack of trying, right? And I mean, I've been a professor. I've taught kids and all that, and you don't grade them ultimately on what they didn't do, whether it was good or bad, right? It's got to be what they actually accomplished. So that's why I'm saying, from the business climate standpoint, does it increase our personal liberty? Does it improve the standard of living of Mr. and Mrs. Hawaii? That's why I gave it a D. But everybody else, I'm out of step. But then again, almost every day my votes are 24-1 against me, so it must be me, right? It couldn't be the other people out of step.
Well, a really big disappointment was the journalism shield law. I mean, that should never have happened.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. You know, I had done a program with Sterling Morita and Gerald Cotto. We're going to have to do a second program because there was so much. But here we had one of the few examples of a good law in Hawaii.
Right.
And it stood the test of time. It was 5 years. And other states across the country adopted our journalism shield law. And it provided two things. It provided for more investigative reporting, particularly of corruption in government. And oh yes, gentle listeners, we do have corruption in government right here in River City. But it protected sources. Now, Colleen knows particularly, I have people coming in to see me in the Capitol, or I see them off campus all the time. They are whistleblowers, and they are very unhappy with things that are going on. And they come to me because they say, well, I can't come to my supervisor, and I can't come to my union leader. What do I do? So we all used to respect, I think, journalists a lot more until they kind of got involved in the government Kool-Aid and all that, got fancy positions. But the journalism shield law was a fantastic law that worked, and it allowed for uncovering of a lot of information that the public would not know about, particularly with the monopoly, single monopoly newspaper. But secondly, it was an opportunity for people to come forward in the 21st century. We're always talking about, let's move to the 21st century, let's tweet, let's do this. And it's electronic journalism. And yet the critics of that law, namely the governor, the attorney general, and the Senate head of the Judiciary Committee, who ultimately harpooned it, they killed a good law. Yeah. And what we're seeing, what we saw last month with the revelations about the Internal Revenue Service targeting certain patriotic groups, the cover-up of Benghazi, and then the government Department of Justice spying on and taking illegal records from Associated Press. Now, Associated Press has never been known as a conservative organization, but they are entitled to rights under the First Amendment. And they were screaming bloody murder. And the footprints of the administration were all over that, Eric Holder and the Justice Department. We have gradually allowed these things to happen because of our inability or our inattention to being involved nationally and certainly locally. I mean, we used to have the best voting record in the nation. Right after statehood here, 1959, 1960. We were in the 90s, and now we're 48, 49%, and we're number 50. We're the worst in the nation.
Well, I'll remind you, when we became a state, the Republicans were in charge.
Yeah.
It was.
You don't think there's any connection there, do you?
Well, I guess maybe the Republicans have stopped being interested in voting.
Well,
I don't know.
Let's keep it honest here. The Republicans actually dominated the territory for 50 years, and now the Democrats have dominated for 60 years. So Lord Acton is right. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Well, I think we need to look at the system fundamentally, because the primary system does something interesting to the Republican Party in a state that's so heavily Democrat. I vote Democrat in the primaries because that's where all the decisions are made. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people like me also do. And that leaves a very small amount of people voting Republican in the primaries, which does not always, I don't think the Republican primary candidate is always
Well, I think we can all agree we need a two-party system, or actually a multiple-party system. The Libertarians, the Greens, right? And secondly, no one is served when one party, no matter who it is, has control and does things like gut and replace bills, meets behind closed doors. We talk transparency, but we don't do it. And here at the legislature, we pass a lot of legislation for you, and then we exempt ourselves from it. So, well, look, you two have talked so much, we're running out of time already.
Sorry.
You know, and a very dear close friend of mine said, now don't be so much gloom and doom, Sam, which I hope I'm not noted for, because I'm a happy kind of person. I'm a positive person. And I want to tell you, we have people like Colleen and we have people like Elise, and they represent different age groups, but they seem to have a commonality in terms of how they look at work ethic and the society. And those of us who are privileged to be in public office, it is a privilege and it's a responsibility. But I'm enthused that we have people like this that are willing to do public service in the future. So we hope that we can leave you with a positive message, and the positive message is you can fight City Hall, and don't give up, and get involved, and either help somebody who's running for office or run for office yourself, or do the things that you can do, because everybody's got something that they can do. And why? Because Hawaii is worth it. We're a great state, great people, and all of that. So with that, we hope that each of us will try to make this a better day, and we look forward to meeting with you again. Thank you so much for allowing us to come in and spend this time with you. For the State Capitol, I'm Sam Slom. Aloha. Have a better day.
Aloha.
Aloha.